Ethan never thought his life would end in silence. One moment, he was inside a small transport ship, watching the stars through a cracked screen. The next moment, warning lights turned red. A loud alarm filled the air. The ship shook hard. Sparks fell from the ceiling. Smoke spread through the cabin. He tried to hold the control panel, but nothing worked. System failure. A cold voice said again and again. Ethan's hands moved fast, but he was only one boy, and the ship was dying around him. Then came one bright flash dot after that darkness. When Ethan opened his eyes again, everything felt strange. The air smelled clean, almost too clean. The bed under him was soft, but not like any bed from Earth. The ceiling above him glowed with pale blue light. The walls were smooth silver, curved like the inside of some giant machine. He sat up slowly and touched his head. It hurt. He looked down at himself. His clothes were still on, but they were burned in places. His left arm had a metal band around it, blinking with tiny lights. He pulled at it, but it did not come off. That was when he heard voices, soft voices. Female voices. Ethan looked up fast. A glass wall in front of him slowly became clear, and he saw 3 figures standing outside. They were not human, at least, not fully. They looked like girls, but taller, sharper, more graceful. Their skin had a soft shine to it. Their eyes were large and bright, in colors he had never seen before. One had silver hair, another had dark blue skin and gold eyes. The third wore black armor and stood very still. Like a guard, all 3 were staring at him, not with kindness, not with fear, but with shock. One of them stepped closer to the glass and said something in a language Ethan did not understand. Voice was calm, but her eyes were wide. The armored one touched a device on her wrist. A moment later, a soft, robotic voice spoke in English. "Do not move." Ethan froze. The silver-haired woman whispered something to the others. They looked at him again, this time with even more disbelief. It was as if he was something impossible. The guard asked, "State your species." Ethan swallowed. "Human." The 3 of them went silent. The word hit them like a weapon. The dark blue-skinned girl stepped back. The silver-haired one slowly turned to the guard. They spoke quickly in their own language again. Ethan could not understand the words, but he understood the feeling. Something was very wrong. The guard looked at him once more. Her expression became harder. "Remain where you are," she said. "You are under royal control." Royal control. Before Ethan could ask anything, the glass turned dark again. He was alone. His heart started beating faster. He got off the bed and looked around the room. It was not a hospital. It was too clean, too empty, too controlled. There was no door handle. Windows, no clock. Only one small mirror on the wall and a table with a clear cup of water. He walked to the mirror and stopped. He looked tired, pale, younger than he wanted to look. Just a normal human boy. But wherever he was now, normal did not matter. Because the way those women looked at him made one thing clear. They had never seen someone like him before. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Ethan could not tell. Then the wall lit up. This time it was not the glass. It was a screen. A symbol appeared first, gold, sharp, and royal-looking. Then the image changed. A large room came into view. It looked like a throne. Hall from some future empire. Tall white pillars reached into darkness above. Strange lights floated in the air like silent stars. And in the center of the room stood a young woman. No, not just a woman. Someone important. She wore a long black and mixed silver dress that looked both elegant and dangerous. A glowing crest rested on her shoulder. Her hair was dark like deep space, and her eyes were bright violet. She looked young, maybe not much older than Ethan. But there was power in the way she stood. The room around her was full of guards and advisors. Yet somehow, she was the only one Ethan noticed. She was looking at him through the screen. Not blinking, not speaking, just watching. Ethan felt cold. The silence stretched for several seconds. Then one advisor leaned toward her and said something quietly. Another one looked nervous. A guard lowered her head, but the young woman did not move her eyes from Ethan. It was as if the whole room had disappeared for her. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was calm, soft, and impossible to ignore. "So," she said, "it is true." The translator in the room changed her words into English. Ethan frowned. "What is true?" She took one slow step closer to the screen. "That a human boy exists." Ethan stared at her. "You mean you've never seen a human before?" Strange look crossed her face. Interest, wonder, something deeper. "No," she said. "Not like this." The people behind her shifted uncomfortably. One older woman in royal clothing stepped forward. She looked worried as she spoke to the young woman in their own language. Ethan could not understand, but he could hear the warning in her tone. Still, the young woman ignored her. She kept looking at Ethan with a focus that felt almost too intense, like she had found something she had been searching for, or something she did not want anyone else to touch. "What is your name?" she asked. "Ethan." She repeated it softly. "Ethan." The way she said his name made the room even quieter. Then she turned slightly to her guards. Her expression changed. Now she looked cold, sharp, royal. "Bring the human boy to me," she said. The guards straightened at once. The older advisor looked alarmed. She said something quickly, almost like a protest. But the young woman raised one hand, and the whole room fell silent. Then she gave the full order. "Bring him alive," she said, untouched. Now, the screen went dark. Ethan stood frozen in the silent room, staring at his own reflection in the black glass. He did not know who she was. He did not know where he was, but deep inside, he knew one thing. The moment that princess had looked at him, everything had changed. The door opened without a sound. Ethan stepped back at once. Two tall guards entered the room first. They wore dark silver armor that covered most of their bodies, but their faces were still visible. Both looked calm and dangerous. Behind them came another woman in white clothing, holding a thin, glowing tablet. She did not look like a soldier. She looked more like a scientist. "Come with us," the woman said through the translator device on her neck. Ethan looked at the guards, then at the open doorway behind them. "Do I have a choice?" The scientist gave a small smile. "No." Ethan let out a slow breath and walked forward. The moment he stepped out of the room, he understood one thing very clearly. He was not inside a normal ship. The hallway outside was massive. The walls were bright and smooth, lined with silver lights that ran like streams along the floor. Strange symbols moved across glass panels. The ceiling was so high that Ethan could barely see the top of it. Everything looked advanced, clean, and expensive, and every person they passed turned to stare at him. They were all female. Some wore uniforms, some wore long royal dresses. Some looked like workers, while others looked like military officers. Their skin colors were different from humans: blue, pale gold, soft gray, violet, and silver. Their eyes were sharp, curious, and full of disbelief. None of them tried to hide it. They looked at Ethan as if he was a living secret. Whispers followed him down every hall. He could not understand their language, but he knew they were talking about him, the only human boy, the impossible one. The guards led him into a long, moving platform that carried them through a huge glass tunnel. Ethan looked outside and almost forgot to breathe. Below him was a city. not a normal city. A giant alien capital stretched under the night sky, full of shining towers, floating traffic, glowing bridges, and round silver buildings that looked like stars had landed on the ground. Ships moved through the sky in silent lines. Purple lights glowed from the rooftops. Everything looked beautiful and cold at the same time. Ethan placed a hand on the glass. He was not on Earth anymore. That truth finally hit him with full force. The scientist watched him. "You are seeing the royal capital of the Alarian Empire." Ethan turned to her. "Empire." "Yes." He hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning inside. "Him, who was that woman on the screen?" The scientist was quiet for a moment. Then she answered, "Princess Lyra." The name felt heavy. "Is she the ruler?" "Not yet," the scientist said. "But one day she will be." "I should have been enough to make Ethan more careful." But something in her tone made him ask the next question. "Why does she want to see me?" This time, the scientist did not answer. The platform stopped. The guards led Ethan into another corridor, wider than the first one. At the end stood giant doors made of white metal and black crystal. 2 more guards waited there. They hit their fists to their chests as the group approached. The doors opened. Inside was a chamber, so large it made Ethan feel small at once. The floor shone like water. Long banners of silver and violet hung from high walls. Soft light filled the room from above. At the far end, on a raised platform, stood Princess Lyra. She was even more striking in person. Her dark hair fell over one shoulder. Her dress was simple this time, but the silver lines across it glowed faintly. She wore no crown, yet everything about her felt royal. Around her stood advisors, guards, and noble-looking women in rich clothes. But none of them mattered when she looked at Ethan. Her eyes locked on him the moment he entered. And again. She did not look away. Ethan was guided to the center of the chamber. The guard stopped. He stood alone. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then one of the older women near the platform stepped forward. She had pale skin, sharp features, and by the next morning, the whole palace was talking about the human boy. Servants whispered in corners. Guards shared rumors in low voices. Noble girls passed secret messages through their personal screens. Some said he came from beyond the mapped stars. Some said he survived a dead zone where no ship could live. Others believed he was not real at all, but some kind of royal trick. Ethan heard none of those exact words. He did not need to. He could feel them in the stairs. Princess Lyra had moved him into a private guest wing inside the inner palace. The room was beautiful, much larger than the first one, with high windows, soft lights, a bed that looked too expensive to sleep on, and a balcony that opened toward the glowing city below. But no matter how grand it was, Ethan knew one truth. It was still a cage. 2 royal guards stood outside his door at all times. Small floating drones moved silently near the ceiling. Even the walls felt like they were watching him. He stood at the balcony and looked down at the city. Far below, streams of lights moved through the streets like rivers. In the distance, tall towers reached into the sky. Everything was calm, shining, and perfect. But Ethan did not feel calm. He felt alone. A soft sound came from behind him. He turned and saw a young servant enter the room carrying a tray of food. She had pale blue skin and short silver hair. The moment she noticed him looking at her, she almost dropped the tray. "Sorry," just said quickly through a translator pin near her collar. Ethan stepped back to make her feel safer. "It's okay." She placed the tray on the table, but her eyes kept moving toward him. Not in fear, exactly. More like deep curiosity. After a few seconds, she finally asked, "Is it true?" "You are the only one." Ethan frowned. The only one, what? The only human boy. He gave a small, tired smile. As far as I know, yes. The servant stared for one more second, then lowered her eyes. The princess has never shown this much interest in anyone. That made Ethan more alert. What? Do you mean? But before she could answer, the door opened. Commander Vexa entered. She was the same armored woman Ethan had seen before. Tall, sharp-faced, and always serious. Her black armor carried the mark of the royal house across one shoulder. The servant bowed at once and quickly left the room. Vexa looked at Ethan. The princess wants to see you. Again, Ethan followed her through the palace. This time, he noticed more details. Paintings moved on the walls like living memories. Hallways curved in elegant shapes. Noble women in rich clothing watched him pass and spoke softly to each other. Some smiled, some looked jealous, some looked angry. One thing was clear. His presence was no longer a secret. When they reached Lyra's private chamber, the doors opened without a sound. The room was large, but quieter than the throne chamber. One side was filled with glowing star maps. Another held shelves of strange crystal objects and books made of thin metal pages. A tall glass wall showed the palace gardens outside, shining under the pale morning sky. Lyra stood near the window. She was dressed more simply today, in dark blue with silver lines at the wrists. She did not look like a ruler at that moment. She looked almost normal. Almost when she turned and saw Ethan. That same focused look returned to her face. "Leave us," she told Vexa. The commander bowed once and stepped outside. Now Ethan was alone with the princess. Lyra moved toward a table and motioned for him to sit. "You did not sleep well." Ethan sat slowly. "You can tell. You walked to the balcony 6 times during the night." He stared at her. "You were watching me." She poured a glowing drink into 2 small cups. "I was being careful." "That sounds like the polite version." A small smile touched her lips. "Perhaps." She handed him 1 cup. Ethan did not drink it right away. "Do you always bring strangers into your private rooms?" "No." "Then why me?" Lyra leaned back slightly and studied him in silence. That silence felt heavier than words. Finally, she said, "Because you are different." Ethan let out a quiet breath. "Everyone keeps saying that. They are right." "No," he said. "I mean, I get it. I'm human." "You haven't seen one before? Fine, but that doesn't explain this." He looked around the room. The guards, the protection. The way people stare, the way you stare. For the first time, Lyra looked slightly surprised, then amused. "I stare." Lot that made her smile again. For a second, she seemed younger. Less dangerous, but only for a second. Then her expression grew thoughtful. "In this empire, rare things have value. Unknown things have power. And impossible things change history." Ethan frowned. "I'm not trying to change anything. I just want to understand where I am. You are in the center of an empire that has never seen a male from your species." Lyra said calmly. "Do you understand what that means?" He shook his head. "It means," she said, "that every noble house wants information about you. Every scientist wants your biology. Every military leader wants to know if humans can become allies or threats." She paused, "And some," she added softly, "will want to own what others cannot have." That last sentence stayed in the air between them. Ethan looked at her carefully. "And what do you want?" Lyra did not answer right away. Instead, she rose from her seat and walked toward the star map. With one touch, glowing lines spread through the air, showing systems, worlds, and fleets. "This empire is built on order," she said. "Power, bloodline, strategy. Nothing enters it without meaning." She turned back toward him. "Then you arrived." Before Ethan could reply, The door slid open sharply. Commander Vexa stepped inside at once, her face harder than usual. "There has been an incident," she said. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Report?" Vexa looked at Ethan for one brief second. "The meal prepared for him this morning tested positive for poison." The room went still. Ethan felt the blood leave his face. His eyes moved slowly to the half-finished tray still. Sitting on the side table, he had almost eaten more of it. Lyra's expression changed. Completely, the softness vanished. The warmth vanished. Only cold, royal anger remained. "Who handled the tray?" she asked. Vexa straightened. "We are tracing it now." Lyra's voice dropped lower. "Seal the wing. No one enters or leaves." Then she looked at Ethan. The intensity in her eyes was stronger than ever now. Not curiosity, not simple interest. Something sharper, more possessive, more dangerous. Someone in the palace had just tried to kill the only human boy in their world. And Ethan suddenly understood that being protected by the princess might not save him from the storm. It might place him right at the center of it. The palace changed in less than 10 minutes. Bright, calm hallways turned silent and tense. Security doors sealed with heavy sounds. Armed guards appeared at every corner. Floating drones moved faster now, scanning faces and tracking movement. Even the servants disappeared, as if fear itself had ordered them to hide. Ethan stood near the table, staring at the breakfast tray that had almost killed him. The cup still sat there. The fruit still looked fresh. The bread still smelled warm. Nothing about it looked dangerous. That made it worse. Princess Lyra did not look at the tray again. Her attention had already moved past it. Her mind was on the person who had sent it. Bring every server, cook, and guard who touched that meal, she said. Commander Vexa gave a sharp nod. At once, when Vexa left, Lyra remained still for a moment. Her face was calm, but not truly calm. Ethan could now see what anger looked like on her. It did not come with shouting. It came with silence. He cleared his throat. "I didn't eat much of it." Lyra turned to him. "You should not have eaten any of it." "I didn't know." "I know," she said more softly. That small softness disappeared just as fast. She walked to the side wall and touched a panel. A hidden scanner opened and red lines passed over her hand. Then a second door slid open behind her. Ethan had not even noticed it before. "Come with me," she said. He looked toward the main door. "Where?" "To somewhere safer." Ethan almost laughed, but he stopped himself. Nothing about this felt funny. He followed her through the hidden passage. The corridor beyond was narrow and dark, with dim silver lights along the floor. It felt older than the rest of the palace, built for privacy, not beauty. Lyra moved quickly, and Ethan had to hurry to keep up. "Do attacks like this happen often?" he asked. "No." "That answer doesn't make me feel better." "It should," she said, without looking back. "It means someone was desperate." That made him feel worse. At the end of the corridor, another door opened into a new part of the palace. This section was quieter, richer, and guarded by soldiers wearing black and violet armor. The moment they saw Lyra, they bowed deeply. Their eyes moved to Ethan, but no one spoke. Lyra led him into a private residence inside the royal wing. This place was nothing like the guest chamber. It felt personal. The walls were lined with star paintings and old royal symbols. A long window opened over a hidden garden filled with silver trees and glowing flowers. There were books, real ones, resting on dark shelves. A soft light burned in the corners. The air smelled faintly of rain and something sweet Ethan could not name. He stopped in the center of the room. "This is your place." "Yes." He turned to her. "You brought me into your private residence." "I did." Ethan stared at her. Why? Lyra looked directly at him. Because no one enters here without my permission. No one watches this area without my knowledge, and no one will try a second attack while I am near. There was no fear in her voice, only certainty. That should have made Ethan feel safe. Instead, it made him realize just how serious this had become. That night, the palace did not sleep. News of the poison attempt spread faster than light through the royal capital. By evening, every noble house knew that someone had tried to kill the human boy under Princess Lyra's personal protection. By midnight, the story had changed a dozen times. Some said Ethan was wounded and near death. Some said Lyra had executed an entire family in 1 hour. Some said the human boy had strange powers, and the poison had failed because his body was not normal. Rumors moved through the empire like fire in dry grass. Inside Lyra's private residence, the air was much quieter. Too quiet. Ethan sat near a wide window, staring out at the silver garden below. Small lights moved among the trees like floating stars. It should have felt peaceful. But after everything that had happened, peace felt fake. He had almost died that morning, and now he was being protected like some priceless object. A soft knock came at the door. "Enter," Lyra said, from across the room. Commander Vexa stepped inside. In her hands was a thin black data case. Her expression was more serious than usual, which told Ethan this was not simple palace business. "I found something," Vexa said. Lyra looked up from the table where she had been studying reports about Naira. "No, about him." Her eyes shifted to Ethan. That was enough to make his stomach tighten. Vexa placed the case on the table and opened it. A small beam of pale light rose into the air, forming old symbols and broken lines of text. Most of it meant nothing to Ethan, but he could tell one thing right away: this file was ancient. The text flickered like damaged memory. Lyra stood slowly. Where did this come from? "The sealed archives beneath the first palace," Vexa said. "It was hidden in restricted records from the pre-imperial age." Lyra's face became unreadable. "Who authorized the search?" "I did," Vexa replied. "After the attack, I stopped believing this was only noble jealousy." Ethan rose from his seat. "Can someone tell me what this is?" Vexa touched. The image and one line of translated text appeared in the air. "When the empire stands at the edge of division, the outsider son of distant blood shall arrive from the dark." Between stars, Ethan stared at the words. Lyra did not move. Vexa continued. "There are more lines. Not all survived, but several speak of a foreign male, human in form, arriving during a time of internal conflict." Ethan let out a breath. That could mean anything. "Not in this empire," Vexa said. "There has never been a recorded human male here. Not once." Lyra stepped closer to the glowing text. Her voice was low. "Read the next line." Vexa obeyed. "He shall be feared by houses of power, desired by the crown, and followed by change no wall can stop." The room went still. Ethan looked from the text to Lyra, then back to Vexa. "This is a prophecy." "An old one," Vexa said. "It's possibly older than the empire itself." Ethan laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "So now I'm part of some ancient space legend." No one answered him. That was worse. He looked at Lyra. "You knew about this?" She did not speak at first. That silence was enough to change something inside him. "You did," he said. Lyra lowered her eyes for one brief second, then met his gaze again. "I knew fragments existed." Ethan stepped back. "Fragments? When?" "I was younger," she said. "I was given access to early royal teachings, hidden records, forbidden texts. Most were symbolic, broken, unclear. But some mentioned a male from beyond known space. And you never thought to tell me that? I was not certain, she said. You looked very certain when I first arrived. That hit harder than he expected. Vexa glanced at Lyra, then stepped back in silence. Ethan's voice grew sharper. You watched me on that screen like you already knew who I was. Lyra's expression stayed controlled, but her hands had gone still at her sides. Because I believed you might be the one described. The one described, Ethan repeated. Do you hear yourself? He walked away from the table and ran a hand through his hair. I wake up in a world I don't understand. Everyone stares at me. Someone tries to poison me. And now I find out the princess may have been expecting me because of an old prophecy. His chest felt tight. None of this was normal. None of it was fair. Lyra took one step toward him. I did not know, for certain. But you hoped, he said. She said nothing. That silence was the answer. Ethan looked at the glowing words again. Desired by the crown. Now even that line felt dangerous. Is that what this is? He asked quietly. To you, destiny? Lyra's voice softened, but it did not lose strength. At first, I believed you might be an answer. To what? To a future I was taught to fear. That made him pause. For the first time that night, her face showed something real beneath the control. Not obsession. Not power. Fear. Small. Hidden, but real. The empire is unstable, she said. The noble houses smile in public and sharpen knives in private. The military obeys, but watches. Old alliances crack. I was told that one day a stranger would arrive and shift the balance. Ethan looked at her carefully. And you thought I was that stranger? I still do. He did not know what to feel. Anger came first, then confusion, then something more. Dangerous understanding. Because when she looked at him, he could now see it clearly. Her interest was never random. Her protection was never simple kindness. From the very first moment, she had seen him as something important, maybe too important. Vexa touched the file again. There is one final line worth hearing. Era turned. Sharply. No. But Vexa spoke anyway. The one who waits for him shall know him before his arrival, and in choosing him, she shall risk throne blood. And war. Ethan slowly turned toward Lyra. The room suddenly felt smaller. He heard his own voice, quiet and cold. You knew before my ship ever crashed here. Lyra did not deny it. Outside, the garden lights drifted through the dark like silent watchers inside. The truth stood between them at last, and for the first time since waking in this alien world, Ethan began to wonder if his arrival had really been an accident at all. By morning, nothing inside the palace felt the same. The truth from the hidden archive had changed. Everything Ethan could still hear the final line in his head. She shall know him before his arrival. Those words would not leave. Him alone, he stood in Lyra's private garden while pale morning light touched the silver trees. The air was cool. Tiny drops of glowing mist floated above the flowers. It should have been beautiful, but Ethan's thoughts were too loud. He was not just a stranger here. He might have been expected, watched, waited for. That idea made every moment since his arrival feel different. Every stare, every order, every act of protection, even Lyra's eyes. A door slid open behind him. He did not turn right away. How long? Lyra stepped into the garden, dressed in black and silver royal armor this time. She looked less like a princess this morning and more like a future empress. I do not know what you mean, she said. Ethan faced her at once. How long were you waiting for me? Lyra was silent for a moment. Then she answered honestly. Years. That one word hit him harder than he expected. Years, he repeated. When I first read the old texts, I was too young to understand them fully, she said. But I remembered them. I studied every report from outer systems, every unexplained signal, every lost ship record, every rumor of human contact. Ethan gave a dry laugh. So, I wasn't special. I was a project. Her face changed. No. Then, what was I? Lyra stepped closer. Hope. He looked away. That answer should have meant something good. But right now, it only made him feel trapped, before either of them could speak again. Commander Vexa entered the garden fast, with 2 officers behind her. Her expression said enough. Something had happened. What is it? Lyra asked. Vexa bowed. Once House Vale has moved ships to the inner routes. House Terran has closed trade lines. 3 border defense groups have refused Palace Command until the matter of the human is settled. Ethan frowned. The matter of the human. Vexa looked at him directly. You? Lyra's jaw tightened. They act too quickly for this too. Be coincidence, it is not, Vexa said. A joint message arrived 1 minute ago. She handed Lyra a glowing slate. Lyra read it in silence. Her face grew colder with each line. Ethan stepped forward. What does it say? Lyra handed him the slate. A translated version appeared to Princess Lyra of the Illyrian crown. Your actions threaten the order of the Empire. You shelter an unknown male, hide ancient records, and place personal obsession above state duty. Deliver the human boy to neutral custody. Or the great houses will act to preserve imperial stability. Ethan read the message twice. Then 1 line burned. Deeper than the rest. Personal obsession. He looked up at Lyra. She took the slate back without a word. Vexa spoke in a harder tone now. This is not only court pressure. It is the first step toward rebellion. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Because of me. No. Lyra said it once. Because they were already waiting for a reason. But I gave them one. Neither. Lyra nor Vexa answered. That silence again. That terrible silence. The rest of the day moved like a storm. Building behind closed walls. Officers came and went. Palace screens lit up with fleet positions. Advisors argued in side rooms. Noble houses released public statements filled with polite words and hidden threats. Everywhere Ethan went, he felt the empire shifting around him. By evening, the palace was preparing for open conflict, and Ethan could no longer ignore one truth. People were going to die if this continued. Late that night, he stood alone in his room, staring at the city lights beyond the glass. Behind him, the private door opened softly. Lyra entered. She looked tired for the first time since he had met her. Not weak. The message ended, but the silence it left behind stayed in the room. On the main screen, the image of Ethan in chains burned into every mind present. The dark chamber, the metal walls, the look on his face. He was alive, but barely hiding his fear. Commander Vexa was the first to speak. Trace the signal. Officers moved at once. Screens lit up across the command chamber. Data lines flashed. Search systems locked onto dozens of hidden frequencies. But Lyra did not move. She stood with her eyes fixed on the empty screen. Her face cold and unreadable. Only her hands gave her away. They were clenched so tightly that the silver rings on her fingers pressed into her skin. An officer turned. Signal origin found. Outer military zone. Old fortress station on Mooncareth. Vexa looked at Lyra. It is a trap. Yes, Lyra said. Her voice was calm to calm. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. She was beyond anger now. She had entered that dangerous place where decisions became absolute. Prepare the fleet, she ordered. Battle Group 1 and 3. Ground carriers. Breach teams. Full assault readiness. One advisor stepped forward in alarm. Princess, if you launch without council approval, the noble houses will call it open civil war. Lyra turned to her, then let them. No one argued after that, far away. On Moon Carith, Ethan sat in a narrow cell of black metal and dim red light. His wrists were free now, but the room was locked, and the air carried the cold smell of steel and old machinery. Outside, he could hear boots, distant engines, and voices in sharp, alien tones. He had been captured only hours after escaping the palace. He had hoped to disappear quietly instead. He had walked straight into the hands of Lyra's enemies. A small panel beside the door slid open. A tray of water and plain food moved through. Ethan looked at it but did not touch it. A voice came from the other side. "You should eat." It was female. Calm, cold. Ethan stepped toward the door. "Who are you?" Pause. Then the answer came. The one trying to save this empire from her. Lady Nyra. Even through the metal door, Ethan recognized the sharp pride in her voice. He shook his head. "By kidnapping me. By removing the weakness," Nyra replied. Ethan almost laughed. "You really think I'm the problem?" "No," she said. "I think she is. You are only the proof." Footsteps faded. Ethan leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment. This had gone too far. Because of him. A princess was preparing for war. Noble houses were ready to break the empire apart. Fleets were moving. Soldiers would die. Then the lights flickered. A second later, alarms exploded through the fortress. Ethan's eyes snapped open. Red warning lines flashed across the ceiling. Heavy steps thundered through the halls. Somewhere in the distance, a violent boom shook the cell walls, then another, and another. The attack had begun in orbit, above Carith. Lyra's warships tore through defense lines like silver blades through. Glass blue fire lit the darkness of space. Rebel ships broke formation under the speed of the royal assault. Explosions burned across the moon's defense ring. On the command deck of her flagship, Lyra stood at the center like a storm given. Human shape. "Destroy the outer guns," she said. "Leave the central fortress intact. Ethan stays alive." Vexa stood beside her, giving rapid orders to ground teams. Landing forces in 30 seconds. Lyra's eyes never left the tactical map. "He is in the lower holding sectors," she said. "They will move him when the walls begin to fall." "You are assuming they are still thinking clearly," Vexa replied. "They are not," Lyra said. "That is why we move faster." Minutes later, royal troops slammed into the fortress from 3 sides. Inside the prison block, Ethan heard screaming metal, weapons fire, and the deep crash of heavy doors failing. Smoke began to slide under the edge of his cell. The entire structure shook again. Then the door controls sparked. The lock failed. The door slid open. Halfway, Ethan stared at it for 1 second. Then he moved. He slipped into the hallway and nearly collided with a wounded guard on the floor. The guard reached for a weapon, but Ethan kicked it away and ran. He did not know the fortress layout, but he followed the sound of fighting and the flicker of emergency lights at the next corner. He found a broken control station and a map screen flashing damage alerts. He quickly scanned it, then pulled a manual override lever. Security doors across the lower sector began to unlock. If Lyra's forces were inside, that would help them. If enemies were nearby, it would also help them. He had no better choice. Rebel soldier appeared at the far end of the corridor and raised a rifle. Ethan ducked just as a blast scorched the wall before the soldier could fire again. A dark figure dropped from the upper stairwell and cut the rebel down in one smooth move. "Commander?" "Vexa, stay behind me." She snapped. Ethan did not argue. They fought through 2 more corridors until the fortress shook with a deeper impact than anything before. Dust fell from the ceiling. Vexa touched her earpiece. "Princess has breached the central gate." Then Lyra appeared through the smoke. Her armor was marked from battle. One shoulder glowed from a fresh weapon strike. Her breathing was hard. But the moment she saw Ethan, all of that seemed to disappear. For one brief second, the battlefield around them no longer mattered. She crossed the distance fast and stopped directly in front of him. Her eyes searched his face, his arms, his body, as if making sure he was truly whole. "You are hurt?" she asked. "No." Only then did she exhale. Behind them, blaster fire echoed closer. Vexa turned. "We need to move now." The escape route collapsed moments later, forcing them toward the upper launch deck. Rebel forces closed in from both sides. Ethan grabbed a fallen sidearm and stayed low, opening one access panel to vent smoke into the enemy corridor. It bought them seconds, just enough. Royal troops broke through from above. The rebels fell back. Neera's final defense line shattered by sunrise. The fortress belonged to Lyra. Back at the capital, the war ended not with another speech, but with proof. The rebels had kidnapped the human boy, planned to use him against the crown, and nearly burned the empire for power. Many houses withdrew their support at once. Days later, Ethan stood beside Lyra on a high palace balcony overlooking the city. The empire below was still healing. So, Ethan quietly, "What happens now?" Lyra looked at him, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. "What began as curiosity became obsession," she said. "But what I feel now is not that." Ethan held her gaze down below them. The future of the empire was waiting, and for the first time since waking in this alien world, he was no longer standing in it alone.